Communication is one of the most important feedback topics in consulting. If you work for one of the leading consulting firms and you get a feedback conversation with your manager, it is pretty much clear that how you communicate will be one of the key topics discussed in this conversation. Hi guys, my name is Heinrich and welcome to my channel Firm Learning. Thank you for watching again. Communication is something that pretty much all consultancies cover in their onboarding training programs. Young consultants need to take dedicated communication classes, and communication is one of the things that is discussed most frequently in feedback conversations between young consultants and managers. When I was a young consultant at McKinsey, it was pretty common that after I was on a call, after I participated in a client meeting and maybe said something there, I would get some feedback from my project lead on how I said certain things. So of course what you say is important as well. And if you said something that might not be considered very intelligent or appropriate to say, then yes, of course, this will be addressed in the feedback sessions. But at least as likely, you will get feedback on how you said certain things. So even though maybe what you said from a content perspective made absolute sense, the way how you phrased it, how you structured your message, this is something that as a young consultant, you will get tons of feedback in most of the large strategy consulting firms. And the reason I believe is quite obvious, because in many ways, it is not always just about what you say, but also how you convey your message. To what extent you are able to actually persuade the other person that what you say is correct. To what extent you help the other person to actually remember the message points that you have and then be able also to tell these 2 or 3 key arguments to other people in an organization in an intuitive and persuading way. So what consultancies commonly do to train their junior colleagues is in these training programs to do role plays. And these role plays frequently go something like this, right? You are being asked to imagine yourself sitting in the team room somewhere at the client, and now the client walks in, and maybe even a board member or another senior leader of the client organization walks in and asks you, hey Heinrich, how is it going? What is the status? Right? And often you're taking a bit off guard, maybe you're in the middle of doing something else, and now the senior leader, this board member, walks into your team room and asks you to quickly and to the point summarize what exactly you're doing and what the status is. And as maybe you can imagine, this puts many people into quite a high amount of stress, and many people struggle to, in a precise and concise way, and actually summarize the key results of the project and give a concise and professional answer to this question of the board member. And in this video, I will bring up one of the points that is really frequently addressed in feedback sessions after these role-play situations, and also in situations in real projects where maybe indeed a senior member of the client walks in and you then as a young consultant say something which may not have met the standards of professional and concise communication. One of the key points that is brought up in these kind of feedback sessions is the distinction between process and content when you communicate. When you answer such a question, when you're asked to give a status report or asked to report on any project manner or any other business manner, if you look at it in a stylized way, there are 2 ways how you can talk about it. It's either focused on the process or it's focused on the content. And let me explain to you what exactly I mean by that. So let's start with process. What does it mean if you talk process? So let's imagine that you've been working on a project that has been about sizing market opportunities in different countries. So your client or maybe your team lead asked you to analyze different geographies and understand if there's a country where it might make sense for your company to enter the market with a certain product that you as a company are offering. So if your communication focuses a lot on process, this means that you focus a lot on the different steps that you took to get to a certain result. So you talk a lot about what you actually did in the last days, in the last weeks, in the last months. So an example could be something like this, to say, well, I talked to the colleague in the finance department and then I got some numbers there, and then I put some market reports to actually combine the data, and then I also looked into macroeconomic information about the different countries, and then I combined these things, but then I realized that actually I'm missing certain information, so I went to the marketing department head and then I talked to her to understand her opinion about these geographies. And then again, I compiled it. And then we had some alignment meetings with other people of the organization. And then now looking at all of this, this is the result that we came up with. Right? So this is a process-oriented way of communicating, and it focuses a lot on the things that you did in order to get to a certain result. And many people like to talk about the process. This is something that many people somehow naturally tend to talk about the process, and probably due to the fact that it really underlines what all the effort is that you put into something. It underlines that you really spend lots of time on a certain task. It underlines that you really worked a lot, that there were just many things that you did, and you really made a big and significant effort to solve this problem. But I hope that you also see the downsides of talking about things in this way, because the focus is on the steps that you took, but the focus is not on results. And now try to put yourself into the shoes of a CEO of a large blue chip company. And you can assume that he assumes that usually the people he works with are professionals and that they will make sure that the things they present to him meet a certain level of quality and of analytical rigor. And the truth is, the CEO of such a company just will not care about all the meetings that you had, all the time that you put into something, all the analysis that you took, and they maybe found out that this actually didn't work, so that then you needed to look into something else, and this then maybe worked or not. The CEO will not care, okay? He does not care about all the sweat, all the work, all the hours you put into something. What he cares about is the result. And if you talk so much about the process, you will just waste his time. And this is something you should be very cautious about, to not waste the time of your co-workers, especially if you operate in such a professional environment. So this is now the process-oriented way of talking about something. Let's now look into the content-oriented way. How would you phrase an answer to the question what you did on a project in a way that actually focuses much more on the content but not so much on the process? And talking about content basically means talking about the results. So let me give you an example. What would that mean to talk about results? So if you talk about the content, you could tell your CEO something like, so from the analysis that we did so far, we conclude that France likely is the country where for us it would make most sense to enter with this new product that we have. And for 3 reasons. First, consumer research shows that this product really meets the needs of French consumers in a way that it is not the same with the consumer behavior patterns that we see in other countries. The second reason is that the competitive situation in these countries is that currently there is no strong competitor there offering a similar product. So if we go there now, we have an advantage because we are the first, and we can now quickly grow in market share before maybe others then join the market later. And the third reason is that our operations are very well set up to enter the French market because we have warehouses, we have a supply chain setup that is very effective in serving the French market at the moment and is much better suited for the French market than comparing to other markets which we might be served instead. So now let's make a cut here. This is just an example of how you could phrase such an answer that now much more focuses on the content. Of course, not the arguments that I said were arbitrary and depend on the specific situation that you're in. But I hope that you see the difference, that what I did not do is explaining what all the steps were, what all the data is that I analyzed, what the meetings were that I had, what maybe first I thought, but then I needed to revise because I found out that it doesn't make sense and something else actually makes much more sense. All of these things I did not talk about, but what I did talk about is what the result is and what the key arguments are that actually back up this result. And now ask yourself, what would be the answer that the CEO likely would be much more interested in? And from my experience in working for several years in consulting, I can tell you that the latter is the proper answer to give in these situations. The latter answer is an answer that somebody communicates professionally and effectively will give. So talking about the content is really the way to go. I cannot stress this enough. Communication is so crucial in any professional environment. and focusing on content instead of process. We're talking about things that you did when giving status updates, when talking about your projects, when talking about the things that you're working on is really crucial and distinguishes you as a professional communicator. And of course, now I talked a lot about consulting examples, I talked a lot about the consulting context, but the truth is that this type of communication behavior is relevant to pretty much any job that you have. It really does not depend at all in which industry you're in. Making sure that you focus on professional communication is absolutely key. And what you notice, even when you work in large blue chip companies, that a lot of people really struggle with good and effective communication. Even senior leaders of some of these companies really struggle with effective communication. This is something where you can actually improve very quickly and make a difference and just shine in contrast to all these other people. And the key phrase that just summarizes this kind of communication pattern. So if you're looking for a name for all of this to do further research, it's called top-down communication. Top-down communication is the holy grail in professional communication, and what I just talked about, the distinction between process and content, is just one aspect of it. There are many other aspects in top-down communication, so I'd like to hear from you. Are you interested to learn more about what professional communication is all about? Let me know and I might cover other aspects of this type of communication in future videos. And just as a quick tip, if you just want to get started right away, the Bible of this top-down communication approach is a book that is called The Pyramid Principle by Barbara Minto. It's a book that, at least at McKinsey, almost every consultant reads. In some training programs, you even get it as a gift, as something you're supposed to read in order to advance. And I can highly communicate this book. I will leave a link to this book in the description below. So if you're interested, just check it out. So let me know if you would like to see more videos on effective communication in this channel. So if you took any value out of this video at all, please press the like button and subscribe, and also press the notification bell to keep up to date with my channel's content. I will release at least one video every week, often even 2 videos. So subscribe to stay posted. I will bring you lots of content on how to be successful in the first years in your career, drawn from my experience at McKinsey and also working in a senior leadership position in a German retailer. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I will do my very best to give an answer to every single comment that you write. So I hope you're all doing well and had a good time. Stay safe, keep learning, and thank you for watching. This is Heinrich from Firm Learning.